What happens when you date someone avoidant is what we will discuss today in this video. As you know, I'm a former dismissive avoidant and I help people to deal with avoidance in their relationship. What I found again and again with my clients is that dating someone avoidant changes you. Unfortunately, not in the right way, because it creates the condition for you to discover insecurities, to feel more anxious, to doubt about yourself, to doubt about your feelings. And in this video, I wanted to explain why. Why, when we date someone avoidant, when we break up with someone avoidant, it has this, I would say, it's not necessarily a negative impact. You feel that negative, I feel that's empowering, because potentially those insecurities, those wounds were there, were dormant, were in the back of your mind. Now they're in the air, you have to address them, you have to heal them. But before we do that, what happens when we date an avoidant? As you know, if you've been following my work, I'm a strong believer that in order for you to heal, in order for you to feel better, you need to understand what's going on. So that's what we're going to do today in this video, explaining what happens when we date an avoidant. So first of all, being avoidant, where does it come from? So a very quick overview. I'll put all the reference of the studies that I include in this presentation in the description if you want to refer to it. First of all, we develop insecurities. We develop an avoidant attachment style when we have inconsistency when we are little with our parents. Neglectful could be the case. I didn't have neglectful parents. I had loving parents, but they were not always there because they were very busy working hard, for instance. What happens is when you have this construct, when you have this perception of the relationship with your primary attachment figure, i.e. your parents, and then you transition to your primary attachment figure, your partner, you start to realize that, or to devalue closeness. You feel like, what's the point? What's the point of me relying on someone? I can do my own thing. And I need to develop a sense of emotional dependency, because when I feel bad, when I feel sad, when I feel angry, there's no one for me around to help soothe my emotional state. So therefore, I have to do it my own. And that's why closeness and seeking intimacy is difficult, right? It's scary. It becomes scary because it's not safe anymore. When we are under stress, when I'm under stress, my default position as an avoidant is to be relying on myself. Whenever I have a problem, I feel I need to sort it myself. Now, I know this is a limitation. I know I need to work on that. But my default would be, okay, I have a problem. I shouldn't share it with anyone, even my wife. I have to deal it with myself. Now, I've learned that it's not necessarily a healthy way of dealing with things, and I have strategies and tools to help me out, but that's the idea. Again, it's really strange when you don't have an avoidant attachment style. Intimacy is scary. It sounds a bit strange because at the same time we love being in relationships, like anyone, but this element of developing and being vulnerable is scary, because if you know myself, I'll be found out. If I'm vulnerable, I'll be weak, and I don't want you to see me like this. That's why I always keep a distance between myself and my partner. And so what happens in terms of the attachment dynamic, we would tend to suppress attachment needs. So one thing you have to remember, we all have a need to be attached to a primary attachment figure. It's an essential need, it's a core need. The thing is, the difference with people who are anxiously attached and people who are avoidant attachment style is that anxiously attached will hyperactivate this attachment, and avoidant people will deactivate this attachment. The objective, if you want to have a healthy relationship, is to aim at being secure where you have the right balance. And also the sort of mindset that I used to have for a very long time is I don't need anyone. Okay, the same thing. I don't need anyone in my life. I'm in a relationship, but I don't want to be too much involved, because if I'm too involved, then I lose my autonomy, etc., etc. So this is avoidant attachment style in a very quick nutshell. If you have any questions on this, let me know in the comment section. The point is, again, not spending too much time on your partner, but really understanding the impact of that type of behavior, of that type of attachment in the dynamic of a relationship. What is confusing when you date someone avoidant is at the beginning, you feel he or she is the perfect partner. They are very charming, they're available, you have this deep emotional connection because of the intensity. So usually people report, I've dated this partner and at the beginning that was perfect, right? Huge, amazing chemistry, great connection. What is very interesting is that avoidants usually idealize partners early on. They magnify their partner, and they also come across as someone very secure, very invested, right? And sometimes too much. So that's why we have sometimes the case of love bombing. That's not always the case with avoidant, but often it's about like big gesture, really investing. If I take my personal example, when I was in my 20s, I was pretty much like quite intense at the beginning of relationships because I love the idea of being in a relationship. But I didn't necessarily understand the impact or what it means to be in a stable relationship. So I would go really, really like being the best boss friend and acting as the best boyfriend, especially at the beginning. And this is very confusing for a partner because you assume at the beginning of a relationship, this is the baseline, this is what I would always get. And obviously when you experience something, it makes sense for you to project what we had is what we will have. And it makes sense, right? This person, and we've been together and we shared great moments and potentially some secrets and intimacy. So there's nothing that will tell you this won't change, right? What you have to understand, and it's very strange, but what you have to understand, it feels, and it's a performance. Again, I'm not a narcissistic person, but it's true that what I used to like is the idea of not pretending, but really acting as, because I wanted to also get the love in return, right? Now, the problem with that is how can you sustain this? And the problem with avoidant people is because as they are doing too much, as they're investing too much, it's very hard to sustain this over the long run. So if you dated an avoidant recently, and you're in that 6 to 9 months mark, this is what's going on. Or if you broke up around that phase, 6 months to a year, it's because of this pursuit stage is followed by a stage where actually they start to deactivate. And so things start to shift at some stage. They're gonna be more distant, very subtly, gradually. Initially, they would be the one initiating dates or plans. Now you're the one who have to chase. Sometimes they don't reply. Sometimes they cancel at last minute. Sometimes you feel they are annoyed. They are closed off. They are very cold. And that's really confusing, right? You have a phase where he or she's the one. It's perfect. We had that chemistry. To a phase of, okay, they are distancing themselves. They are very cold. And so this is where you can sense that that person is deactivating. This relationship felt too close. I was too invested in the relationship. It is too hard for me to imagine myself in this highly emotional relationship for a very long time. I can't sustain the effort. Therefore, I'm going to deactivate. And this is where you get that push-pull dynamic. I talk a lot about this push-pull dynamic on my channel. The idea of, I want to be in a relationship, it's too overwhelming. And then that's where, when you are dating someone avoidant, it's exhausting, right? Because you don't know exactly. One day they'll be super excited, one day they will withdraw. Always walking on eggshells, not knowing what to do, not also having any sort of confidence about the future with this person. And this will create a cognitive dissonance in your brain around confusion. That inconsistency, it is the worst in terms of emotional processing. My job as a therapist is to provide clarity. is to help you focus on things you can control, obviously, but provide clarity. And I know those situations are very confusing because one day, as I said, very nice, very happy, 10 out of 10. Next day, awful, distant, etc. And the problem is your brain can't process this dissonance. What happens is when you have this dissonance, obviously what you want to do is to try to get hold of the positives, right? You focus on the positives, which is great, right? That's a survival mechanism. We hold on to the positives. And the thing is, when you do that, you create what we call intermittent reinforcement. That will create a form of addiction. Because you're focusing on the positive, then you default to, I must have said something wrong. I must have done something wrong. And tell me if you relate. Then you are in the mindset of, I need to fix the relationship, right? I'm part of the relationship. I'm invested. There's something broken. I need to fix it, right? And the problem is, when you are in that mindset, your self-esteem starts to depend on their validation, right? You feel, this is my fault because he or she was so perfect. I haven't changed. Or maybe I did something wrong, right? That's the only thing that could explain their behavior. No. What explains their behavior, their distancing is about them. It's not about you. That's why I know a lot of people watching my videos feel like, that's the answer I needed. Because I felt I was crazy. People were telling me like, just move on, just like he's not interested or she's like narcissistic or whatever. No, it's not a question of feelings. It's a question of safety. It's a question of feeling secure in your relationship. And when you date someone avoidant and you don't know they're avoidant and they behave this way, that could be like kind of a very difficult to deal with when you're dating them. Now, if you break up with them, it's also the same and it's even worse because you're again trying to put all the pieces of the puzzle together. And it's very important for you to, take a step back, and that's why I'm making those videos. Take a step back, understand your role, your responsibility, understand the things you potentially could have done or said, but also, and more importantly, understand their role. Because some of their actions, some of their insecurities have nothing to do with you. And sometimes the question asked my client initially is like, okay, let's imagine he or she was dating someone else. Do you think they would behave differently? And if you're clear that, they've been like this with other partners, it's kind of a pattern in their relationship history, this gives you an answer. That's not necessarily about you. And these are common thoughts that you might have. Maybe if I just give them more space, they'll come back. Maybe I'm too needy. Maybe I just need time. If I love them enough, they'll heal. It was so good at first, I just need to get them back. They are special. I won't find anyone else like them. Let me know if you can relate on any of those. What I want you to reflect on is these thoughts are around changing yourself. And again, you're watching this video, you're taking care of yourself, you're trying to learn, you're trying to get answers. But it takes two to be here in a right relationship, right? And the danger of dating someone avoidant, and again, I'm dismissive avoidant, so I understand how painful it is sometimes to date people like me, is never forget that they are adults. Right? And they also are responsible for their actions, for the work that they are doing, and if they have insecurities, for the work they are doing at addressing those insecurities and healing their wounds. So yes, we can improve. Yes, you can improve. Yes, there are things you could be doing. But the point is, the solution is not necessarily about the actions or the behaviors towards them. The point is, what can I do today to feel myself again? Because sometimes we lose ourselves in relationship. We lose our identity. When we experience this kind of roller coaster, when the world is turned upside down because of this relationship, it's really about like, what can I do for me? It's not about them. It's not about getting back with your ex. Yes, initially that's the thing. There's something wrong. If we get back together to where we were at the beginning, everything will be perfect. I'm going to tell you a secret, and might be not the one you want to hear. You will probably never get back to the first few months of this relationship. Not that this person lied to you, but actually, any relationship always have this, they always have this passionate element at the beginning, the honeymoon phase, and then always transition to a compassionate phase. Your role, if you're in a long-term relationship, if you've been with your spouse for 20 years, for example, is to be able to reignite that spark, to nurture that spark over the long time. Now, if you're in a relationship and you transition from the honeymoon phase to a compassionate phase, is how you can bring commitment in the relationship. And it takes two to develop this element of commitment. And so right now it feels a bit like a mine F. Especially if you broke up with an avoidant partner recently. You have, as I discussed, the emotional highs, the emotional withdrawals, and that triggers the reward system in the brain, right? That's how slot machines are designed. You have unexpected reward depending on the input, and you can play 10 times, you have 10 different outputs, 10 different outcomes, and that drives you crazy and that drives you addicted. The problem is when you have this addiction, you accept those breadcrumbs, right, of connection. That uncertainty activates the same region as pain in the brain. That's why people dealing with avoidant, breaking up with avoidant, are in so much pain. And that's normal if you're in pain. That's not a question of you being weird or weak or whatever. That's normal. The point is, okay, this pain, those negative emotions are a signal that I need to do something about it. And your job right now, maybe it's about awareness, about the situations, about their avoidant attachment. What happens as well is, and the reason it creates this mind F, is that you're going to start second guessing everything that you do, right? I did a mini course on self-gaslighting. Sometimes we are telling ourselves the wrong things because we don't allow ourselves to feel, to look at the relationship, to actually analyze the relationship. And that's why we feel insecure, we feel anxious. A lot of my clients were secure before they dated their avoidant partner. The problem is that now the genie is outside of the bottle. They want to put it back. That's not how you do it. It's really about doing the inner work. It's really about reflecting on your role. I developed a method called the Secure Base, inspired by the work of John Bowlby. And that's what we have to do. And I think, yes, breakups are tough. Yes, you wish you could have avoided this pain, but at the same time, perhaps that's the first step of many steps that will really help you to find the right relationship, to find who you are. Essentially, that's what happened to me. That's the work that I've done. It took me years. Now, as a therapist and someone who's very conscious about being efficient and being hyper-focused on the outcome, it doesn't have to take years. It's really about doing the work, but doing the work in the sense of like developing that secure attachment style to finally have the right set of boundaries, to finally have the right communication, because you can't effectively communicate with your partner if you have those insecurities, if you have those outbursts of anger, of resentment, if you display those what we call protest behaviors in attachment theory. And so when you do this work, everything falls into place. You meet the right people, you dismiss the wrong ones, you trust yourself, you love yourself. And so, yeah, if you have any questions on that, let me know in the comment section. I'll put some links for you to as well, for you to learn more about attachment, maybe figuring out whether you should get back with your ex or not. Have a good day. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.